Hey guys, it's Sean O'Connell, the Managing Director here at CinemaBlend, and we are here to talk about all of the cameos that showed up in Joe and Anthony Russo's massive blockbuster, Avengers Endgame. So naturally, we're going to have to dive into some spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, go check it out right now, then come back and watch the rest of this video. For the rest of you guys, let's go. You're going to want to keep up with everything that we're doing here at CinemaBlend. Also, if you're a big Marvel fan or just love entertainment in general, so go down, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and every time we post a new video, you guys will be told about it. So there were plenty of cameos from characters that showed up in previous Marvel movies that came back for Avengers Endgame. In fact, the movie was really light on introducing original characters, and virtually everybody who had a speaking role in Joe and Anthony Russo's Endgame was a character who we'd seen pop up in other movies, whether it was Clint Barton's family or characters that we saw through some of the earlier Captain America individual films. Now, some of these were a little bit expected and some of them were off the wall surprising. So let's quickly run through the ones that stood out to us and why they were able to show up in this 22nd chapter in the MCU in general. I want to start with KORG and MIEK, who are two characters that we met in Thor Ragnarok, and they run with the God of Thunder. When we catch up with Thor after the 5-year time jump in Avengers Endgame, he is definitely struggling with the fact that he failed to stop Thanos, and then he is able to essentially behead the original Thanos, but still can't quite get over the fact that he failed in his vengeance mission, and as a result, Thanos was able to make the snap. Well, Thor has set up a new Asgard, and he has taken the surviving Asgardians, we lost a lot of them in Ragnarok, and then we lost even more of them at the beginning of Infinity War. Thor has set up this new Asgard for his people, but he's not quite the leader that they need. He's instead hibernating in a cabin where he's playing video games like Fortnite with KORG and MIEK. And anytime we get a chance to sort of catch up with KORG, who's voiced by the incredibly hilarious Taika Waititi, it's a bonus for us, and we love to see him show up here in Endgame.
The hammer rode you on your back?
No. I used to spin it really fast, and it would pull me off the...
Oh my God, the hammer pulled you off?
The ground. It would pull me off the ground up into the air, and I would fly.
Alexander Pierce was a big surprise because he's a character that we have not seen since Captain America the Winter Soldier, and of course he's played by the Hollywood icon Robert Redford. And the only way that we were able to catch back up with Pierce is because there's a time heist in Avengers Endgame that sent 4 members of the Avengers team back into the events of the original Avengers film. Now, at the point where they're trying to intercept the Tesseract and Loki's scepter, it turns out that Tony Stark runs into Alexander Pierce, who's trying to get his hands on those valuable properties because, as we will learn in The Winter Soldier, he's of course running Hydra disguised as S.H.I.E.L.D. So to see Redford come back out of retirement, because again, this is an actor who had announced that he was not going to be acting in any more projects, he brings Alexander Pierce back, which means that Avengers Endgame should go down as Robert Redford's final film, and that's a great send-off, not just for the MCU, but for this Hollywood icon who's had this legendary career.
Hail, Hydra.
The time heist also sends the Marvel characters back to Thor the Dark World, and it's in that moment where we catch up with 2 actresses that we did not think we would ever see again in a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. The first one is definitely Renee Russo. Her character of Frigga, who's Thor's mom, naturally was never going to come back because she was killed in the scene that's referenced in the movie. And in fact, this is very devastating for Thor. He actually sees, when he sees his mom, he's sort of moved by the fact that he's able to see her again. He admits that this is the day that she's going to die, but at the same time, because of the rules of time travel, he really shouldn't interact with her. But they get a really beautiful moment because Frigga knows that this is her son, but it's also her son from the future. He's totally able to recognize her. They have a really emotional moment where they sort of bond about the person that Thor is supposed to be, and I think Frigga in that scene actually sends her son on a new path that probably will be explored in future Marvel movies. We also see Jane Foster, who's played by Natalie Portman, and this is a bit of cinematic trickery because while most of these recreations of the previous Marvel films were reshot by Joe and Anthony Russo, the bit of Natalie Portman playing Jane Foster is actually a pickup from Thor the Dark World, which means this is existing footage that they had left over from Thor the Dark World that either wasn't used or was part of a different scene. So Natalie Portman, as far as we know, did not come back and actually film this new cameo, but of course it gives a chance for Thor to at least see Jane from a distance and put him into a scene for Thor the Dark World. world. Borrowing from old characters who we didn't expect to see again, the time heist brings Tony and Steve back to 1970, where Tony gets an amazing scene with his father, Howard Stark. Now, Howard's been an inspiration to Tony, and his shadow has cast over the legacy of Tony Stark for pretty much all of the Iron Man films, and we did see some archival footage of him in Iron Man 2.
From all of us at Stark Industries, I would like to personally... Tony, what are you doing back there? What is that? Put that back.
References to him in Captain America Civil War because of the history between Cap and Bucky and Tony Stark. But we get Howard interacting with his son. They get a really tender moment on the day that we believe that Tony Stark was going to be born. Tony pretends to be someone named Howard Potts. He shares some wisdom with his father. They have a really beautiful interaction. And in that point, we get a really funny cameo by Howard's butler and driver Jarvis, which of course is going to become the voice that inspires the AI inside of Tony's suits.
As always, a great pleasure watching you work.
This next one is a blink and you miss it reference, but Howard the Duck, who was in the Collector's Lab and of course has a rich legacy in the Marvel Comics universe, does appear in the final battle at the Avengers facility. When Captain America summons Thor's hammer and gives the iconic line of Avengers Assemble and all of the teams are marching forward, when the Ravagers walk through one of Doctor Strange's portals, they are joined by Howard the Duck. This fact is confirmed by the Russos, although I have seen the movie 3 times and have looked for Howard every single time and can't quite see him, but I know he's there because the Russos have told me that he's there. So if you've seen him, head down to the comments, tell us exactly where we should be looking when the battle is about to begin. The last one is an Easter egg that is on full display and yet is still a little bit mysterious to some people. This is during the pivotal scene of Tony Stark's funeral, and there's a beautiful one-shot that traces all the way up from the Tony Stark heart that's placed on the bed of flowers through the entire line of Marvel Cinematic heroes as they're sort of bunched into the franchises as they exist. And as we weave through the Guardians of the Galaxy and the folks from the Ant-Man universe, we end up on Harley Keener, who's played by the actor Ty Simpkins. And if you do not recall, this is the young boy that Tony befriended in Iron Man 3. And at the end of that movie, he actually ended up donating a lot of equipment and setting up a lab for Harley inside the garage of his Tennessee home, where he's able to continue to explore and invent and sort of follow the path that Tony helped to put him on. And of course, you know, Harley helped Tony sort of rebound from his attack by the Mandarin. This is a weird cameo for the Russos to include, though, because Ty Simpkins doesn't look anything like he did in Iron Man 3, and I know it left a lot of audience members walking out of Endgame and sort of wondering, who was that kid and why was he there? And is it sort of being a reference to set up this boy who could become Iron Man in the future, or was it just a nice nod to the fact that he played a part in the Iron Man franchise? I think it's the latter, but we'll see how things play out with the character of Iron Man in the future. That's the bulk of the major cameos. Of course, we had other people like William Hurt coming back and playing Thunderbolt Ross, but we didn't see Liv Tyler returning as Betty Ross. And there are a few other major characters who did dust. I saw Eric Selvig on the board of people who dusted. Other classmates of Peter Parker, maybe the one played by Zendaya, who could have shown up. And, you know, Endgame, while it has room for so many people, didn't have room for everybody. If we missed a major cameo that you guys were able to see in Endgame, go down to the comments. Tell us who we missed and where you saw them. And then, of course, while you're down there, do me a favor, hit subscribe. You're going to want to keep up with all of these videos that we keep putting on our YouTube page because we're talking a lot about Avengers Endgame and all the major blockbusters that are still coming to theaters for the rest of this summer.